Welcome to Capitol Report, a weekly discussion with your elected officials on the issues and concerns that affect you.
Thank you and good evening. Great to have you along once again for Capitol Report. The legislature is reconvening after the 2-week spring recess. Handful of issues on the agenda as they come back to Lansing, and we'll be talking about those this week with our guest, Representative Jon Bumstead. He is a Republican from Newaygo and in his second term representing the 100th District. Welcome, Representative. Good to see you.
Thank you.
Our conversation is going to air at the end of your first day, but as we sit down, back in session, we should say, but as we sit down on this Monday, news this morning is pointing to several things that will be at the top of the agenda as you all come back to Lansing. And what seems to be at the top of that list, is it indeed the road funding issue that will be among the #1 priorities this week as you get back?
I think road funding is at the top of the list. There's a couple items, like you say, road funding, Medicaid expansion, budgets. We need to get our budgets out here. We want to do it again in June. 3 years in a row. It's never been done before. So for me, it's really, let's get the budget out, then we can really focus on the other issues.
How has the progress been? We were going to get to that a little bit later, but since you brought it up, that's fine. The progress to date and the timeline in trying to get those budgets done by June 30, how are we looking?
It's looking real good. You know, with the first term, we kind of did a 2-year rolling budget. We're going to try to roll that into the 3rd and 4th year. We plan ahead like the governor likes to do, and our leadership. You know, plan 2 and 3 years out. And the way the numbers are coming in, it looks like they're going to be steady this year compared to last year. So it's a lot easier to know what, you know, what the dollar numbers are, and it's going to be easier to project. And it looks like most of the committee work, a lot of it is done already, and some of the bills are already out of committee. Now they'll go to leadership or to the Senate or vice versa, and they'll get to haggle over the final numbers. But things are looking real good to get it on time again.
Later this month, or is it May for that next revenue estimating conference that could, we always watch that to say, okay, here's the plan, but yeah, will those numbers hold up?
I believe it's first part of May. I'm not exactly sure of the date.
When we look at the issue also then of the road funding, Representative Joe Habman is proposing a 1-cent increase to the state sales tax. The governor, as we know, called for an increase to the gas tax and vehicle registration fees. Either of those, both, or neither? Which do you come down in support of?
Well, I'll give you my spill on it after I go through the first two, but I give the governor a lot of credit for wanting to address this right away into this 3rd year. We knew it was coming up last year, and he threw some ideas out there on the wall. He's going to see what sticks, and what he's done is brought people to the table with ideas. And Representative Hoffman is his idea of the 1-cent sales tax. You know, it might be a good idea, it might not be. You got to see the final numbers and how it's all going to work out through the process of, you know, how much money is needed, how much is going to be required, if the 1 cent's going to cover it all. Personally, I think we really need to look at, you know, is there ways that we can spend this money more efficiently yet? Are we wasting it in certain areas with MDOT? Or are there still other parts of our budgets that we can, you know, borrow money from or take money from or eliminate other programs to fund roads and infrastructure? Personally, I'd like to see if we can do that, more of that first before we ask taxpayers for more money.
What would it do, though, to the timeline? Do we have money right now that as we're already into the beginning of the season, certainly, but if we are projecting out for what could still be done in 2013, and especially if we looked at this proposal to raise the sales tax, that would have to go before the voters. That seems to put this issue further down the road. What about money that we need right now to have crews on the road doing that work?
Well, we're going to have, you know, same amount of money we had last year. That projection will still be there. It's the additional. That isn't there yet. That's the additional money is what we got to find, or if we can find it somewhere else in the budget, or go back to the taxpayers and ask them, you know, what's the best route to go? Bring it to a ballot initiative, or you know, restructure the tax.
The governor refers to his proposals for the gas and the vehicle registration as user fees, and I'm wondering if, because everyone buys something, can the same pitch be made? Representative Hoffman, he said in his view that this would be the easiest sell We already have seen some of the negative backlash to the governor's initial idea. At least some people were raising some opposition. So from your standpoint, acknowledging that you'd like to see some other approaches done, what do you think might be the better sell or something to get it before, the voters, the people that in the end we're looking for the money from?
Well, we did a little research of our own through our office, and really people want us to look at efficiencies first. The gas tax was acceptable to a lot more people than raising the registration fees. The registration fees, I think, is dead on arrival. Just to say another $120 this year is hard for people to swallow in one lump. It's another $120. Whereas if you look at a gas tax, whichever amount you choose, they see everybody is going to pay that. Out-of-state folks that are vacationing, or the rich, the poor, the medium income, everybody will be paying that. And that's probably an easier sell. And with our, what came back to our office with what we sent out. But really, the most important thing that came back is people want to see more efficiencies. They want to make sure the money is spent throughout the state on an even manner. They want to make sure the rural districts in the villages and cities and large cities, it's a fair division of the money. They want to make sure it gets spread around the state.
What about the question of sustaining this over time? Representative Joel Johnson from Clare was here earlier in the season, and an idea that he wanted to reintroduce was the idea that any new job creation initiatives that led to more revenue, that at least a portion of that could be set aside, targeted specifically, and put into a fund. Because if we look at, we need to do a lot of work on the roads now, but that is an ongoing priority. How do we set up something that's really going to pay for this over the long term?
Yeah, he's right. That's exactly right. It's what happens in Michigan or a lot of states is during the good times there's a lot of money out there, and it seems like that money gets spent in other directions. It gets borrowed from here to pay this program or a new program started. And I think you need to set something where the money stays there, long term, so you know what to do 5, 10, 15 years down the road, so you can budget and decide what sections of roads or new roads or whatever you want, what projects need to be planned years in advance, so you can start planning on that, and you're going to have the funding for that. I like that theory.
I guess last week Representative Rick Altman just closed out a survey from his constituents to gather some public input. We've been talking about these ideas, his idea, and I guess now knowing from sitting down before our cameras went on that it came out of your office too, the survey of the constituents to find out some of the ideas, what they think would be the best solution. So what are the voters telling you?
A lot of them just aren't hot on the gas tax. It was about a 55-45 for and against. It was more against. It was 55 against and 45 for. The registration fee was like 70 against.
As you said, pretty much that one's going to be off.
And everybody's getting the same feedback there. What really got the best is more efficiencies first. Remember, we're close to a $50 billion budget in the state, and some people, and I'm probably one of them, that thinks let's keep looking at the budgets we have now, and what programs out there we don't need anymore. Let's put that back into road funding.
How much flexibility do you think we have? Because it not as much now as in prior years on this program when the budget situations were much more dire, but the fact that we are locked in with so much of our budget tied to that 1963 Constitution and not a whole lot of room to maneuver when it comes to making adjustments, removing money from one budget, allocating it somewhere else. If you're doing reviews like that, what are some of the areas that come to mind where you think some more efficiencies could be found?
I think maybe the way the bidding process is done, maybe looking at more private sector jobs coming back, let the private sector bid on a lot more of the state projects, that type of thing.
Does any of that is tied to then the new status of right to work? Is there any extension that goes from that to one to the other in terms of how we are now going to be presenting ourselves as a state to those looking to possibly come in and do business and do work here. For those that are still kind of getting used to the idea of what this really means in the future moving forward, what are the distinctions?
You know, I don't know that it's going to play a big part of it, because I think most of your larger companies are union companies, even ones that will be coming in out of state when they bid on projects or bridge work, that type of thing. Most of them probably are union shops. There's very few small companies that could do the larger projects that are non-union shops. I don't know that's going to affect it at all.
You were one of the votes that went through when the bills came up, the bills tied to the $20 million requested for harbor dredging. We compare that to this issue of the roads again for getting the work done this year. What is now that process moving forward? How soon do we start to see some of those projects moving forward with that money now available?
You should by the end of this month. That money came out, a lot of the waterways projects got put off a year. We just put them back a year. In this, I think it was at 21 million. The bids can go out, I think, shortly. There's enough contractors now. There's over, I don't know, close to 100 different contractors or whatnot that can bid. They were worried about contractors getting other bids in other states of the Great Lakes region. So we want to make sure we kept the ones local we could to get that money out there, because we need to make sure these harbors are ready to roll, you know, end of April, first part of May for all the tourists. Since we're pushing Pure Michigan, we got to have a place for them to fish and bring their boats in. And I have Oceana County, I have Pentwater. That's really my only harbor, and it's very important we get boats in and out of there. And this year they've got last year they dredged the channel, and this year they're going to dredge the city docks, so you can get boats parked in there.
Another one of your committee assignments is the subcommittee for Department of Natural Resources. Now, I realize, again, this is perhaps a question of distinction, but for those who wonder who oversees some of the priorities with the Natural Resources Trust Fund, because there was a proposal that some money be taken from there to go into harbor dredging. Describe that relationship so that people are comfortable with the idea of that idea being on the table, how it could be related or not as it comes to DNR?
As it is right now, dredging money couldn't come out of the trust fund. You couldn't even apply for it. Constitutionally, it's protected. It has it laid out what projects it can be used for. I really, you know, the trust fund is probably one of the few things in the state that we've ever done right. You know, it was set up in the early 70s, between MUCC and some of the different groups. You know, that was the only way we could get on the state land for drilling for oil and gas. And the agreement was between all the groups is that money has to be put back into the state and communities, and the communities can leverage it with their grant money and to do great projects. And throughout the state, there's millions of dollars of good projects put out there. And they might be city parks, they might be boat launches. And there's criteria they have to meet. And dredging isn't one of those unless we change it constitutionally.
Another one of the issues on the likely agenda as you folks come back to Lansing is proposed changes to the no-fault insurance. The majority, or at least Republicans in the majority, have come out with a position that the legislature is calling for caps on the available medical funds. Do you support any of that's under consideration, those proposed changes?
Yeah, I don't know the final numbers yet, because I don't sit on that committee. But that's what I'm hearing. I don't know if it's $1 million cap or a $2 million cap, but I think you're going to see direction. You know, I would support a cap of some sort, but I want to make sure there's a guarantee in there. It does show a savings to the insurance buyer, because otherwise, you know, we'd be doing all this for nothing. But I think they're going to guarantee $125 savings per vehicle, and I want to make sure that stays in there. So, you know, otherwise there's no sense doing this.
Of course, there's always the other side, and they say that the reason that we have higher rates are other factors, not these caps that are, or these unlimited funds that are in place. And some opponents of the change are saying, to paraphrase them, quote, the rest of the country should get in line with us, saying, as I said, that other factors have led to the higher insurance rates. Where do we rank nationally, and what do you think is the main reason behind the higher rates that we do have in Michigan?
Well, I think there's only 2 states that are uncapped, and I think we're one of them. And you know, I don't blame the hospitals and whatnot that, you know, the way they have to charge the the insurance companies, because we're kind of making up for it with your car insurance for the people that don't pay. And I probably don't blame the hospitals and whatnot, because a lot of people are using the emergency rooms and they shouldn't be. They're kind of using it as a makeup. And I think I think putting the cap in there will be a way to curb that. And even if you go to a $2 or $3 million cap, that still would be the highest in the country. A lot of states only have $30,000, $50,000 for a cap. But Michigan is just unlimited, and it's costing us too much. When rates keep going up $30 to $40 a year just for that coverage alone, we can't keep doing that.
You also do sit, as we said, on the subcommittee for DNR, and I'm wondering, as the legislature reconvenes, what are some of the top issues that are being looked at for that committee as you return to work?
In the DNR, there's always a lot of issues, because DNR covers a lot of, has boating, hunting, fishing, timber. They control all of that in the state. Right now, it's the restructuring of the license fees throughout the state. Right now, there's over 200 different hunting and fishing licenses throughout the state. Fishing, trout, there's just too many. They'd like to restructure that down to 40, 35 to 42, somewhere in there. So we've had a lot of meetings with all the user groups and the DNR, and we think we can get to 40 or less. And a lot of it is, there's going to be a few fee increases, not a whole lot. Some of them are going to be a little bit less, but say you wanted to go fishing on the Great Lakes, you're going to have to buy a hunting license in the state of Michigan. A hunting license is going to cost you $10, and that would include your small game license and migratory bird license. So if you want to go fishing, you have to get that hunting license. In a lot of states, you do that now. Like if I go to Illinois bow hunting, which I do occasionally, I have to buy, it's a $70 hunting license plus the deer license, which is $400. I spend $500 to deer hunt in Illinois. Well, if they come here, they'll still only pay $150. But it's, the restructuring is a good idea. There's been too many different license structures, for the past 10 years. Senior citizens will still get a discount. Active veterans, military will still get a discount. 100% disabled will still get the discounts. For your fruit growers, your crop damage permits on the deer, instead of $15, we're going to lower them back to $10, but they'll still have to purchase the hunting license of $10. It just makes sense to restructure everything. It's a lot simpler. The sporting goods stores are going to like it a lot easier. It's a lot easier for the DNR also. So it was time. They really haven't looked at restructuring or any types of increases since in the early 90s. So, and we had a lot of the user groups, a lot of our committee doing testimony. We've had zero negative comments on it. Or same thing with the ORV users. It's very expensive to operate the ORV trails throughout the state, the groom trails, and they are really encouraging a fee increase. It's $16.25 now to get a 3-year ORV license. That's going to go to $26.25, and if you use the state groom trails, it's a $10 additional. So
how much of this is tied to now, or are any of these tied specifically to a bill?
Correct.
that you did introduce, and it's been referred? So where is the status? I mean, you referred to hearings, then in committee, coming up for a committee vote, or going to the full House? We got it out of appropriations, but the fee increase I have to put in as a separate bill, and we'll probably do that in a week or two. We want to get a little more of the committee work done. But I'll probably drop it as a bill in a couple of weeks. Then really the whole budget hinges on if that bill passes or not. And I've not heard any kickback. Actually, this week in Lansing, there'll be a lot of the user groups going to the offices, going to the committee, everybody on the committees and whatnot, and encouraging them to pass the bill. Related to that then, environmental quality, you're also a member of that subcommittee, and to that matter, the extension that goes to agriculture and rural development, that covers obviously a lot of ground when we talk about the interest in a lot of the outstate areas. Yep. What are the top agenda items there for coming out of recess? As far as ag goes, that bill was passed out of the House committee, and Representative Potvin from Wexford County, he chairs the ag committee, and that was put out about 3 weeks ago. He was one of the first bills out. The governor has been very friendly to ag since he's been in. He's realized how important it is. It's a $90+ billion business in the state,
and we want to make sure that we work as well as we can to help the growers and the farmers in the state. So in this year's budget, the numbers are up a little bit to help them out with inspections and that type of thing. But we want to make sure, we're going to help the growers and farmers and not be in their way. So it's been a good working relationship between the legislature and all the different growers and farmers.
Any waiting game from the standpoint of the federal farm bill, which passed the Senate, was hung up in the House, got passed in a different form at the time of the fiscal cliff, and now Senator Stabenow has been calling for a new farm bill. How much of the work, either for funding or policy, from the agriculture standpoint, could be altered in some way pending the outcome finally of a federal farm bill?
They're really going to try to get that out again this year. In fact, this morning we had an legislative breakfast with Senator Hansen from my area. Senator Stabenow's office was there, gal was there, and Congressman Heisinga's office was there. We meet with our local growers and farmers and processors every 2 months. We put on a breakfast. And that was the first thing on the agenda, what's going to happen at the national level. And Senator Stabenow's office is going to work real hard and try to get that passed this year. We're not going to really, our budget doesn't really hinge on the federal government a whole lot because we want to make sure we could get our budgets done on time because we know what happens in Washington. We didn't want our budget to get hung up. So whatever they do, we'll have our. Senator Stabenow is very active with the growers in the state, for obvious reasons, and she's done a good job as far as I can tell. And I think when she says she's going to try to get that out, I take her for her word.
We're sitting down on a rainy day, we should say. Not sure how things will be by Tuesday night when people are tuning in on this, but at least as we sit down, plenty of rain today. How about the prospects? What are your farmers telling you for the season itself? We didn't have quite the spike in really abnormal conditions as last spring as we've gone through, but are we looking then overall at a better, more stable and secure season for our growers?
I have Oceana County, which we have asparagus and a lot of cherries and apples, and last year they are basically, especially the fruit guys, they were basically wiped out. Some of them had 15 to 20% of their crop. The cherry guys were 100% lost, basically. This year, they have a big smile on their face. The trees a year ago, things were already leaved out. Then we had that frost, it devastated everybody's crops. This year is almost a perfect year so far. Everything's coming slow. In fact, in the Shelby area, I think you could still snowmobile there a week ago. So everything's coming up slow. They're really pleased with what's coming on. With this rain, it'll help. It'll get rid of the remaining snow and get some of that frost out. So everything's really looking very well.
So the funding bills then that you work on, or funding measures that are put in place in terms of the safety net that needs to be there, because we're always at the will of Mother Nature and what happens. How did we weather that? I mean, you say 100% loss, but how did we weather that? And what are the short-term, long-term in terms of having those provisions in place from season to season?
Well, last year we did that emergency loan program. Those folks that did use it appreciated it. It didn't even get maxed out. There was still plenty of money there towards the end. I think it was first part of March we were done with that. We were done with that program. But they just like to have that safety net, like you say. If they do qualify and they need that $100,000 maybe to get next year's seed or whatnot, it was there for them. I think they really appreciate the thought it was there. And when they did this program, I think it was in early 2002, I believe, they did it also. And it was 100% payback. And that very seldom happens. But the growers and the farmers are very responsible. They paid, the ones that did borrow paid it all back in that 5-year period. And it's a great program, but they just like that safety net of having the ability, if they need it, that money is there for them. And also it was available for the certain processors too. And in the 100th district, with Nestle Gerber's, and I have a lot of processors in Oceana and Wago County. And I don't know that any of them even applied this year, but at least it was there for them.
In our last minute, then, if we take a step back, are there any other, if you even had to list off just a few of the issues that were either ones that you have in play right now or issues that were carryovers from the last term that did not see their way through? What's the top of your own personal list of things that you would like to see the action on?
Personally, getting the DNR budget out is important to me. It's important to the state of Michigan. We know we're pushing pure Michigan, and we need to have state parks open. We need to have state parks up and running. We need to have the timber industry. It's billions of dollars. We need to have that up and running. We want to protect it. We got to make sure our fire surfaces are up and running and in a safe manner. We don't want to save money if it's going to cost lives. But getting that budget out with the restructuring of the license fees, everybody knows what's going to be coming up and what it's going to cost. For me, with chairing the DNR budget, that's important to get that part of it done in the next month and a half.
And the prospects, you say, then look good for the whole budget to be done early and on time.
Yes.
Again.
Yep. 3 years in a row in June is never been done before. But when you have control, and you have a governor and the House and Senate that are one party, there's no excuse not to have it done.
Well, we'll watch the progress moving forward. Obviously, lots to get back to now following the recess, and want to thank you very much for taking the time to catch us up on what is happening there.
Yep. Thank you.
And thanks very much.
You bet.
And thank you so much for your time and attention as well. Remember that our program does get the repeat airing into our overnight Wednesday morning here, and within a week we also have all of our programs posted to our webpage. If you go to the CMU public broadcasting site, WCMU.org, click on TV, and then you'll find the link for Capitol Report. We've welcomed this week Representative Jon Bumstead from the 100th District. Thanks to our crew for being on hand for all of this as well. I'm David Nicholas. Good to have you here, and we'll talk again.
You've been watching Capitol Report. Join us again as your elected officials speak to your concerns on current issues.